Hey everybody, it's Adam, and this is day 2 of the COT videos. So here's what I'm going to talk about. We've addressed, which COT report I use, why I use it, and now I'm going to show you how I turn it into an actual indicator. So sort of picking up with the last video, this is the disaggregated COT report on gold. And we can see how in the producer and user category right now, they are long 38,000 contracts and they're short 231,000 contracts. So what do you do with this? So what I do is I create a percentile. So the first step of doing that is creating a net position. And all that is longs minus shorts. So this is the net position of producers and users. But it's important to not just look at how this net position has changed, but you've got to scale the net position to open interest. Because think about it like this. Like right now, the open interest in gold futures is 850,000 contracts. And the net position is like net short 193,000 contracts. You can see how the open interest in gold has risen a pretty good bit since even like late last year. So late last year, the open interest was like 620,000 contracts. So you can see how this net position of net short 190,000 would have been a much bigger figure relative to the old open interest. So what all this means is that the gold market, it's grown. There are more outstanding futures contracts between people. And so you need to scale a net position by open interest, because this will account for when a futures market grows, like in this case, or in some markets, it actually shrinks. And so what I do with this net position is I just divide it by open interest. So now you get a net position as a percentage of open interest. And this graph is actually of this since 2006, the start of the disaggregated report. So this is not a half bad stopping point of looking at a net position and scaling it by open interest. But where it gets tricky is all these contracts are different with how people are positioned. So maybe in one contract, producers and users being net short 23% of the open interest, maybe that's extreme. But maybe in another contract, let's say like in crude oil, maybe producers and users are only net short 5%, and that's an extreme position. So what you have to do to sort of normalize this number between contracts is create a percentile. And all a percentile does is compare the current value relative to the max and min values over a given period. I personally use a 5-year period, because if you only look back at, let's say, the past 1 year of positioning of this number, I think it's too myopic, it's too short-sighted. And then in contrast, if you go way back, like let's say 10 years or so, I think that it gets really tough to have extreme positioning when your look back horizon is so long. So here's how this works. Is very simple formula. You can see it. This is looking at the max value for the net producer and user position as a percentage of open interest over the past 5 years. So over the past 5 years, the most sort of bullish producers and users have ever been on gold was, when was this? This was in early 2014, when they were actually net long. So the most bearish they've ever been was, let's see, that's going to be right here. So in late 2012, when their minimum position was net short almost 31% of the open interest. So in the current figure right here is net short 22.7%. So this is the formula. It's just current minus minimum divided by max minus minimum. And you see that the current reading is 25%. So the lowest this could be is 0%, and the highest it could be is 100%. So if it was 0%, this current value would have to be negative 30.8. It would have to be the lowest reading over the past 5 years. And vice versa, if I had a figure like, let's say the current position was, net long 1.8%, you would see that percentile become a percentile of, almost 100, where that would mean producers and users would have been super bullish relative to the past 5 years. And so let me undo that. So What this figure of 25% means is like, let's look, because we're looking back over the past 5 years or so. You can see that this is as bullish as they have been over the past 5 years. This is as bearish. So this current net position of net short 23%, it's fallen in the lower end of the range. And so, with that being a min, this being a max, you can see how it sort of visually looks like it's 25% of that 5-year range. And so this video is meant to serve as an overview of how I actually calculate my positioning metric. So it's important to, have the long and the short. You calculate a net position. You scale that net position by the open interest to account for markets either growing or contracting. And then finally, from this net position as a percentage of OI, you just make a 5-year percentile out of it. And this number can be equally compared across multiple contracts. So for example, a producer and user position with a 5-year percentile of 25%, it's the same thing between gold and corn or oil. It means the same thing. So it makes it easy to compare. And you can see on my website how, let's go to the gold graph. You can see how right here, the producer and user category, the 5-year percentile should be right at 25%, which is what we got. And so I hope this video helped you see how I calculate my metric, the 5-year percentile. And as always, if you have any questions, email me. I'm happy to help out.